Welcome everyone to the completely free AZ-900 Azure Fundamentals Certification course. My name is Sullivan. I'm an AZ-900 certified. I hold multiple IT certifications across the industry, and I'm going to be your instructor for this completely free course. Today we're on day 7, and we're going to be focusing on Azure Identity, Access, and Security. After completing today's day, this is basically what you're going to be able to describe. You will be able to describe directory services in Azure, including the Microsoft Entra ID and the Microsoft Entra Domain Services. You will be able to describe authentication methods in Azure, single sign-on, multi-factor authentication, and also passwordless. You will be able to describe external identities in Azure. Well, another thing, you will be able to explain what Microsoft Entra conditional access are, role-based access, the concept of zero trust, the purpose of defense in depth model, and you will be able to describe the purpose of Microsoft Defender for the cloud. Microsoft Entra ID and Microsoft Entra Domain Services is the first thing that we're going to learn for today's date. And what Microsoft Entra ID is a portal where you're going to be able to manage all the identities of your users. This includes setting up permissions for them, what can and cannot they access. So this is basically a portal where you're going to manage identities. Remember this for your test. And what Microsoft Entra Domain Services, this is basically where you're going to manage virtual machines, virtual networks, resources, all this stuff that it doesn't include identity. So remember, for Microsoft Entra ID, remember the word identities, and for Microsoft Entra Domain Services, think about all the service, including virtual machine, all the resources that you use for your Azure certification test. What Microsoft wants us to be able to do is to describe the different types of authentication methods that they provide for their cloud services, specifically for Azure. And the first one we have is the single sign-on. And think about this basically where you sign once onto any web page, and then I can authenticate you to a different page using the same credentials. So single sign-on, I sign in once, and then I can be authenticated on the next time with the same credentials. So I only need to sign once, remember, for your test. Multi-factor authentication, that's where I need a minimum of 2 factors. So for example, I will need like my phone or a text message or my email or some sort of double factor authentication that is not only going to be my password, but I'm going to need another factor of authentication. So remember, 2 factors of authentications. And then also passwordless. And passwordless, what it is, this doesn't mean that you don't need a password, but this is going to replace your password with something more secure. You're going to replace the password with something that can be more secure, because passwords sometimes cannot be secure. So for example, we're going to replace the password for Windows Hello, either the Microsoft Authenticator app or some sort of FIDO security keys. So basically that's what it is. Passwordless doesn't mean that there's no password. What it means is that you're going to replace that password with something more secure that can help you change that password to something different. Azure external identities. These are going to be users that are outside of your organization and they want to access your resources safely and secure. Example, you have a domain name domain.com, and then you have somebody else from a different domain, so you can give them access to your organization, which will be an external identity. So external identities is users that are outside your organization. Microsoft conditional access, this is basically setting up specific conditions for users on what they can and cannot access. Examples, you have your applications and from which locations I can access my application, except from which endpoints I can access my applications, which identities can access a specific part of the world, like my resources or my infrastructure. So conditional access is setting up what can and cannot access from specific regions or availability zones in Azure. Azure role-based access, this is basically an authorization system that manages who has access to Azure resources and what they can do with them through the 3 core elements, which are security principles, role definitions, and scope. Think about like they're gonna give you access based on your role. So for your AZ-900, think that you get access based on the role that you perform. Remember this for your AZ-900 certification, you get access based on the role you perform. One of the things for your AZ-900, you have to understand the concept of zero trust. And zero trust means never trust, but always verify, because the zero trust model assumes that breaches are inevitable or have a radio core. And basically, to understand this, there are three principles that you can check for the concept of zero trust. And this is verify explicitly, always authenticate and authorize based on all available data points, use least privilege access, which least privilege access means limit the access with just one time or just enough access. And then assume breach, minimize the blast radius and segment access to prevent lateral movement. So remember for your AZ-900, I think the best thing that you can remember for this, the concept of zero trust, is to never trust and always verify. The defense in-depth model is one of the things that you must know for your Azure certification test. And the purpose of the defense in-depth model is to protect critical assets and data by using multiple independent security layers. So for example, what I'm trying to say right here with multiple security layers is that you can add more and more and more security layers. For example, I start with my data, I put a layer of protection on my data. Then I got my application, I put another layer of protection on my application. My compute services, I include another layer of protection. Then I protect my network with another layer. So it's just layers of layers of layers of security. Remember this for your certification. So if you guys been watching this course, you know that at the end of the day, we do a quick recap of what we learned during the day. And today we learned how to describe Azure identity, access, and security. We learned to describe directory services in Azure. Remember, this includes your VMs, all the stuff that happened during the directory. This includes Microsoft Entra ID. This is where you manage your identities for your users. And then Microsoft Entra ID domain services. This is where you have your VMs, all that stuff. We learned how to describe authentication methods in Azure, including the single sign-on. Remember, single sign-on, I only need to sign once, and then I can authenticate by that only sign. Multi-factor authentication, that is like having two forms, a minimum of authentication, and passwordless, which will replace my password with another form of authentication. And then we have describe external identities in Azure, which are identities that are not on my domain, and I can give them access to my domain. We learned the conditional access, and that's accessing based on specific conditions. The role-based access control, and that's giving access only to the roles that the user has. The concept of zero trust, which means I've never trust anyone and I'll double verify. We learned that the defense in depth model, which is adding layers and layers and layers of more security. The more layers I can add, the better. And we learned how to describe the purpose of Microsoft Defender for cloud, which is that basically a Windows Defender but for your cloud portal. So let's start with question number one. And question number one says, which Azure service is a cloud-based identity and access management service used to manage user logins and resource permissions? So let's analyze one by one what we have. We have Microsoft Entra ID, that is basically what allows me to manage user logins and resource permissions. But we also have Azure Virtual Desktops. The question is not asking you about anything with desktop, so we can discard that with the process of elimination. Azure Policy, this is not Azure Policy because we're not talking about any policies or setting up policies specifically. And Microsoft Defender for endpoint, this is basically like your Windows Defender but for cloud. So the correct answer is Microsoft Entra ID. And this service is the primary identifier provider in Azure for managing resources, user groups, and access to both cloud and on-premises application. Question number two. Which security feature requires a user to provide two or more forms of evidence to verify their identity during signing? Remember, when I talk about two or more forms of evidence, I'm usually talking about multi-factor authentication. Single sign-on, I only need to sign once, and then I can identify myself in multiple places. And then role-based access control is giving control to like specific roles. So the correct answer is role access control. Multi-factor authentication. And multi-factor authentication specifically refers to the process of using multiple categories of credentials, such as passwords, plus, or a phone authentication. Next. What is the primary benefit of using single sign-on in an Azure environment? Good question. We have a really good question. What will be the benefit of me using that single sign-on? And let's read what we have. So users required to change their password every 30 days. Why would users be required to change the password every 30 days? So this, I can discard this completely. Users only need to set of credentials, one set of credentials to access multiple applications. That could be the correct answer, but let's keep reading. It prevents users from accessing the Azure portal from an outside office. That doesn't make any sense at all, so we can delete that. And it automatically encrypts data, all data stored in Azure. So A, B, and C are incorrect. And I believe the correct answer is users only need to set up one credential to access multiple applications. This is definitely the correct answer, so because I only need to authenticate myself once. Single sign-on simplifies the user experience and improves security by reducing the number of passwords a user must manage. Next. Question number 4. What security model operates on the principle of never trust, always verify? Remember, when I talk about never trust, always verify, I'm talking about the zero trust model, because I shouldn't trust anything and I should always verify. So if you guys see something like this on your AZ-900 test, read the questions carefully. But if you see this, the correct answer is going to be zero trust. The zero trust model assumes that every access request is a potential threat and must be fully authenticated, authorized, and encrypted. Next. Which mechanism allows you to grant a specific permission, such as reader or contributor, to users for a specific Azure resources? So this one's a little hard question, but try to fix it, try to find the correct answer. So let's start. Which mechanism allows you to grant a specific permission, such as reader or contributor to users? So we can start with Microsoft Entra External ID. I don't think that's a thing, Entra External ID. So we're going to skip that one. Next, network security groups will be giving something with computer resources and like network, so I can discard that one. Azure Service Health, we already talked about that, and that's where we're going to check our health of our services. The correct answer right here is going to be Azure Role-Based Access Control. And the reason why this is the correct answer is because Azure Role-Based Access Control is the system used to manage who has access to Azure resources, what they can do with them, and what areas they have access to. Next. What is the purpose of the defense in depth security model? To reduce the cost of Azure subscriptions by sharing resources. This completely doesn't make sense at all, so this is not the answer. To provide a single unbreakable firewall for entire network. Defense in depth shouldn't be just a firewall, like, so I should put more layers of protection. To ensure all the Azure resources are deployed in the same region, has nothing to do with a defense in depth model. To protect data using multiple layers of security controls. Correct answer D, guys. Remember, when I talk about defense in depth, I'm talking about protection and multiple layers of protection. So let's read our explanation. And the goal is to provide multiple levels of protection so that if one layer fails, others are placed to stop the attack. Remember, if for whatever reason my layer fails, I can use other layer to prevent the attack. Question number 7 says, which service provide a central dashboard to monitor the security health and receive recommendations to harden your Azure environment? We want to harden our Azure environment. So the correct answer is going to be the Microsoft Defender for Cloud. Remember, I want to protect the most my cloud services. So Defender for Cloud provides secure score and recommendation to help organizations improve their security posture across resources. Next question, question number 8. In Microsoft Entra ID, which feature uses signals like user location or device states to decide whether to allow or block a sign-in attempt? Trick question right here, guys, but how can we identify this is we're talking about user location or device state. So when I'm talking about user locations, I don't think I explained this on the day, but if you ever see user location or device states, this is going to refer to conditional access, because conditional access allows me to set from which location or for which device I can access my Azure resources. And let's read what the answer says. Conditional access acts as if then engine that evaluates signals who, where, what device to enforce security policy. So I can set up conditions on like which devices can access specific things from using the if then. Question number 9. Which capability of Microsoft Entra ID allows you to securely share your organization applications with guest users from their other organization? Keyword right here, guys, guest users from other organization. And that is going to be, let's see what we have. We have Azure Managed Identities. That's not going to be it. We have external identities, business to business collaboration. That is going to be the answer, but let's keep seeing. Azure Active Directory, that's to connect my directory with Azure. And Microsoft Entra Domain Services, no. The correct answer right here, guys, is going to be letter B. And this is external identities, business to business collaboration. Remember, I'm talking about guest users, so I'm referring to external users. And B2B, if you see something like this, B2B, it refers to business collaboration. And business to business collaboration allows you to invite guest users to use their own credentials to access your resources. Next. Which authentication method allows users to sign in using biometrics or a security key instead of typing a password? So, okay, I don't want to type a password, that's what they're saying, but I can use biometrics or either a security key for this. So remember, when I replace my password with something different, I'm usually talking about a passwordless authentication. So the correct answer is passwordless authentication, but we have also shared access signature, SAS, secondary password verification. I will be talking about some sort of multi-factor. And legacy authentication, this is not legacy authentication because it's no authentication, so passwordless authentication is the key. And what you have right here, the explanation is that passwordless methods like Windows Hello, FIDO, 2 keys, and Microsoft Authenticator replace traditional password with more secure passwords. I want to say congratulations. You made it to the end of day 7. Keep studying, keep learning, keep watching this course. I guarantee you, it's a guarantee that if you watch this completely course, you will pass your AZ-900 certification for completely free. Thank you. All I ask for your part is to subscribe, thumbs up, like, share this course, tell your friends, tell your family, help me. And thank you to all my subscribers for being here, and see you on the next day.